Help me hit 1,000 subscribers. If you find value in what we talk about here today, I truly hope you will consider subscribing to this channel and joining a growing community of thoughtful people who want to understand human connection on a deeper level. Your support means more than you know, and reaching that milestone will help us continue creating content that truly matters. Now let me share something with you that most men over 50 never realize until it is too late. Most men who have reached the age of 50 or beyond have a certain idea in their minds about how love and interest should work. They truly believe that if a woman is interested in them, they would be able to see it right away, like a bright light shining in a dark room. They imagine that attraction always comes with very big, very loud signs. They think there will be direct compliments that make their ears turn red, or touches that stay a little too long to be just a mistake. They expect clear invitations that are so easy to understand that there is absolutely no room for any doubt or confusion at all. But here is the heart of the matter that many of us learn as we go through the journey of life. The problem is that attraction rarely works that way anymore, especially among women who have lived, learned, and reached a more mature stage of life. At this beautiful and thoughtful stage, most women are not going to simply walk up to a man and announce their deep interest with a megaphone. They are not going to put themselves in a spot where they feel like they might be rejected in a way that is obvious or public or hurtful. They have hearts that have been through a lot, and they are careful with them. Instead of being loud, they do something that is much more quiet and much more gentle. They do something very subtle. They ask questions. The big challenge for men is that these questions very rarely sound like they are romantic or about love. In fact, most of these questions sound so very ordinary and so very plain that many men answer them without ever realizing what is actually happening in that moment. A woman asks something that seems totally casual on the surface, just a bit of small talk to fill the air. The man, being helpful and practical, gives a very logical and practical answer. The conversation just keeps moving along, and that special little window of opportunity quietly closes and disappears into the night. He walks away from the conversation thinking that they simply had a nice, pleasant chat. She walks away feeling like he either was not interested in her at all, or he just did not notice the little door she was trying to open for him. This happens so much more often than most men ever realize. It is not because these men are not confident enough, and it is definitely not because they are not attractive or because they are too old. It happens because the way we talk about attraction changes as we get older. A woman in her early 20s might flirt in one way, maybe a bit more obvious or bold. But a woman in her 40s, 50s, or 60s often flirts in a way that is very different. She becomes more careful, more thoughtful, and more indirect. Instead of making a big move, she gently opens a door and waits to see if you are paying enough attention to notice it. Let me share some of the most common questions women ask when they are interested but not quite ready to say it out loud. Once you understand what these questions actually mean, you will start noticing opportunities that may have been sitting right in front of you all along. Because after 50, success in love is rarely about trying harder or pushing more. More often, it comes from simply recognizing the good things that were already there. The first question sounds simple enough, but it reveals far more than most men realize. A woman looks at you, smiles with her eyes, and asks how old you really are. On the surface, this sounds very playful. It sounds like simple small talk. It sounds like she is just trying to fill a quiet moment in the conversation so it is not awkward. But if you pay very close attention to the moment, there is usually something much deeper happening underneath the words. She already knows you are not 30 years old. She is not conducting a survey for a company. She is not collecting information to put into a computer spreadsheet. What she is really paying attention to is how you respond when the subject of age enters the conversation. She wants to know whether you are comfortable with who you are today, or whether you secretly believe your best and brightest years are already behind you. She is listening for your confidence, not for a specific number. This is where many good men accidentally get in their own way. The moment the question comes up, they start apologizing for their age without even realizing they are doing it. They make little jokes about getting old and falling apart. They talk about their aching joints or how they cannot see as well as they used to. They laugh at themselves before anyone else has the chance to say anything. The woman may smile politely at the joke, but something in the air changes. It is not because she cares about the number on your birth certificate, but because she noticed the discomfort hiding behind your answer. A much stronger way to respond is to be relaxed and sure of yourself. You want to say something that shows you have made peace with your journey through life. It is not about being arrogant, and it is not about pretending to be a younger man. It is just a quiet, peaceful acceptance of where you are in your life right now. I remember speaking with a man who told me a story about meeting a woman during a live music event in the park. They were talking comfortably and enjoying the music when she tilted her head, looked at him, and asked how old he really was. Instead of just giving his age, he immediately started joking about senior discounts and how he always forgets where he left his car keys. She laughed a little, but the conversation never quite found that warm energy it had before. Another question that often catches men by surprise is, why are you not married? It can sound very personal when you first hear it. Some men even feel like it is a bit of a criticism, as if they are being asked to explain why they are alone. But most of the time, that is not what is happening at all. When a woman asks this with genuine curiosity in her voice, she is rarely trying to investigate your past like a detective. She is simply trying to understand your present life. What she is really asking is whether there is actually room in your life for someone else to join you. She wants to know if you are emotionally available, if your heart is open, and if the things that happened in your past still control the way you look at relationships today. The question may be about marriage on the surface, but underneath it is almost always about possibility. This is where many men accidentally close the door on a new connection. Some men immediately begin explaining every single failed relationship they have ever had in great detail. Others talk for a very long time about divorce, or how they were betrayed, or the heartbreak and disappointment they felt. Then there are the men who respond with a bit of bitterness, saying things like, "Marriage just is not worth the trouble anymore," or "I have finally learned my lesson." They may think they are just being honest, but what the woman hears is something very different. She hears a man who may still be carrying the heavy weight of yesterday into his today. A much stronger response is calm, simple, and kind. You do not need to tell her your whole life story in one sitting. You also do not need to hide your past like it is a secret. You simply need to show her that you have learned from your past without being trapped by it forever. A response like, "Life took me in a few different directions, but I am still open to meeting the right person," says far more than a long 20-minute explanation ever could. I once heard about a man who met a lovely woman during a charity event. They spent most of the evening talking and laughing together. Near the end of the night, she asked him how it was that a man like him was not married. He immediately started a long story about everything that had gone wrong in his previous relationships. She listened politely because she was a kind person, but the easy and happy energy between them seemed to just disappear. Later, he realized she was not asking him for a history lesson. She was trying to discover whether there could be a future for the two of them. Another question that sounds very innocent, but often carries a lot more meaning is, do you date younger women? The moment a woman asks this, many men become unsure of what to do or say. Some men treat it like a big compliment to their ego. Others immediately become defensive or worried. A few men even assume it is a trap and try to avoid answering it altogether. What they fail to recognize is that the question is rarely about younger women in general. More often, it is about one woman in particular. What she is really trying to find out is whether you could ever see someone like her as a real possibility. She is not asking you for a list of all your previous dates. She is not asking you to justify what you like. She is trying to understand whether the connection happening between the two of you is something you would actually allow yourself to explore. This is where men accidentally create distance. Some start bragging about younger women they have dated in the past, thinking it makes them look more attractive. Others immediately dismiss the idea by saying something like, "No, I am way too old for that," without realizing they have just rejected the very possibility she was quietly thinking about. A much better response keeps the focus on the connection between two people rather than on their ages. Something simple and honest often works the best. You might say, I pay more attention to how I connect with someone than the number attached to how long they have been alive. Or you could say, for me, things like chemistry, character, and how well we get along matter much more than a birth year. Answers like these allow the conversation to stay open and warm while showing that you have confidence and maturity. I remember hearing about a man who met a woman during a book club on the weekend. They spent the whole afternoon talking about books, sharing stories, and enjoying each other's company. At one point, she smiled and asked if he usually dated younger women. Instead of turning it into a debate about age, he simply said, I enjoy spending time with people I genuinely connect with. That has always mattered more to me than anything else. Her smile grew much warmer after he said that because she had received the real answer she was looking for. One of the most overlooked questions a woman can ask is, what kind of woman do you usually go for? Most men hear that question and assume she is simply making conversation. They think she is asking about his preferences the same way someone might ask about his favorite foods or the places he likes to travel. But when a woman asks this during a warm and engaged conversation, there is often something much deeper happening beneath the surface. She is not just gathering data. She is quietly comparing herself to the picture you are about to paint with your words. She wants to know if she belongs in that picture. She wants to know whether the qualities she sees in herself are the same qualities you genuinely value in a woman. In many cases, she is trying to see whether leaning a little closer emotionally would make sense, or whether she should keep her distance to stay safe. This is where many men make a mistake without meaning to. They begin listing physical traits as though they are filling out a grocery list or an order form. They talk about height, hair color, body type, age, or a collection of things that sound more like a fantasy than a real human being. A stronger answer shifts the focus toward qualities that create a meaningful relationship. You might say, I really appreciate a woman who is kind, curious, emotionally mature, and able to enjoy life without taking everything so seriously. Notice the big difference there. Instead of describing a specific look, you are describing a feeling. Instead of talking about a fantasy, you are talking about the kind of connection that actually lasts. I once heard about a man who met a woman through a volunteer program. They spent several weeks working together and naturally grew comfortable around each other. One afternoon, she casually asked what kind of woman he usually went for. He paused for a moment and then answered, someone who makes life feel a little bit lighter, someone I can talk to for hours and still want to have another conversation tomorrow. She smiled and said that was a much better answer than she expected. Another question that often appears when a woman is interested is, are you always this charming? On the surface, it sounds very playful. It sounds like a nice compliment wrapped inside a question. Most men just laugh it off, brush it aside, or assume she is simply being polite and nice. What they fail to realize is that she is doing something much more important. She is acknowledging the connection she feels, while giving you a chance to acknowledge it too. This is one of those rare moments where attraction briefly rises up above the surface for both of you to see. She is not really talking about charm. She already knows you are charming, otherwise she would not have asked the question in the first place. What she is really trying to discover is whether you can stay present in the moment with her without hiding behind a joke or pretending you did not notice what just happened. Many men become uncomfortable when they receive genuine warmth or a compliment. The second a compliment arrives, they immediately try to push it away. They joke about it, they dismiss it, or they act as though they do not deserve it. Unfortunately, when they do that, they often shut down the very special moment she was trying to create. A stronger response is simple, relaxed, and confident. You could say something like, only when I am enjoying the company I am in, or maybe the right person just brings it out of me. Then there is perhaps the most vulnerable question of all. A woman looks at you and asks, Would you ever date someone like me? Most men hear that question and immediately start overthinking everything. They wonder whether she is joking or just being polite or simply curious. What they fail to recognize is how much vulnerability is often hidden inside those few simple words. Think about what has to happen before a woman asks that question. She has already imagined the possibility in her mind. She has already wondered what it would be like for the two of you to be together. She has already considered whether the connection between you could become something more. The question is not the beginning of her thought. The question is the result of all that thinking. This is why so many opportunities disappear in moments like these. A man becomes uncomfortable and gives a neutral answer. He changes the subject or laughs it off because he is afraid of assuming too much. In trying to protect himself, he unintentionally makes her feel very exposed. She took a small emotional risk and received uncertainty in return. The strongest response is usually the simplest one. It is not a clever line and it is not a big performance. It is just honesty. By now, you may have noticed a pattern running through all of these different questions. On the surface, they sound completely different from one another. One woman asks about your age. Another asks why you are not married. Someone else asks whether you date younger women or what kind of woman you usually go for. The words change, but the deeper purpose rarely does. In almost every case, she is trying to answer a question she is not quite ready to ask you directly. The mistake many men make is treating these moments as requests for data instead of invitations to connection. They focus on giving the correct answer rather than understanding why the question appeared in the first place. As a result, they respond with logic when the moment actually requires awareness. They hear the words, but they miss the feeling underneath them. What makes these moments so powerful is that they reveal something about the way attraction works later in life. Most mature women are not looking for dramatic gestures or complicated games. They are looking for safety, clarity, and signs that their interest will be met with warmth rather than embarrassment. Instead of taking huge emotional risks, they often take very small ones. A question here, a playful comment there, a little opening that allows them to explore the possibility without feeling too exposed. As we come to the very end of this conversation, I want you to notice something very important. None of the questions we discussed were really about the words being spoken. They were about what was happening underneath the words. A woman asks how old you are really, but she is often looking for confidence. She asks why you are not married, but she is often looking for emotional availability. She asks whether you date younger women, what kind of woman you like, or whether you would ever date someone like her. But beneath all of those questions is the same desire to understand whether there is a genuine possibility between the two of you. That is why so many men miss these moments. They are listening only with their ears when they need to be listening with their awareness. They hear a question and immediately search for a logical answer. Meanwhile, the real message slips past them unnoticed. The message is not about giving information. The message is actually saying, "Help me understand where I stand with you." If you found value in this conversation, please consider subscribing to this channel. Help me reach that 1,000 subscriber milestone so we can continue exploring how we connect, how attraction really works, and how you can better understand the signals people send. The men who do best in dating after 50 are often not the ones who are the most handsome, the wealthiest, or the most charismatic. They are the men who pay attention. They are the men who recognize interest when it appears and respond with warmth, honesty, and confidence. Remember this: the next time a woman asks you a question that seems surprisingly personal, do not rush to answer it. Take a moment and ask yourself what she might really be asking you. Because sometimes the question you hear is only half the conversation, and the answer that changes everything is hidden in the part she never says out loud.